Oh, hello. In today's video, we're going to catch up with all of the Warhammer previews that have happened over the last couple of days. Unfortunately, there's no previews for Kill Team, although if you look really hard and listen really carefully, there is a tiny little Kill Team related soupçon of information for you, okay? So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. Let's start with Scaventide. So, Scaventide is the launch box for the new edition of Age of Sigmar. And if you're really interested in Age of Sigmar stuff, there are channels that have gone through all of this stuff in detail and how the new game is actually played and what the changes are going to be. I don't know anything about Age of Sigmar, really. I'm considering getting into it. I've got a massive Soulblight Gravelord's army because I just like skeletons. But I'm not going to do a deep dive into what we find out about the rules today because I don't know the current edition well enough to compare and understand what's changed, alright? But I want everything in this box apart from the actual miniatures, right? So if we look at what's in the box, you get 24 Stormcast Eternals and 50 Skaven. You get 4 terrain features, sort of 2 walls and 2 more sort of static pieces of terrain. You get 2 range rulers. You get the new Age of Sigmar core book. You get the Fire and Jade core book, which is all about Spearhead. You get a double-sided game board, which is again for Spearhead. You get the Spearhead card deck and the General's Handbook cards, which I think, are required to play a kind of match play game of Age of Sigmar. So I'm curious. I'll label myself in that common thing that's going around at the moment of being Spearhead curious. It's similar to Combat Patrol, but it plays on a standard-sized Kill Team board. So 40k Combat Patrol plays on a double-sized Kill Team board, or a double-sized Wartime board, if you prefer. Not Wartime. Warcry, yes. Whereas Spearhead plays on the same board size as both of those. Now, will it be any good? I'm not sure. But depending on how cheaply I can pick up the bits and pieces I need, I'm certainly up for giving it a go, because like I say, I've certainly got all the miniatures to have a go at Spearhead. Now, this whole package with everything you see here is £160. That is £10 more than 40k Leviathan, which came out last year. But I will say Leviathan didn't include any bits of terrain, so that's something. Okay, that is something. You know, whether you think it's a good deal is going to depend on your kind of situation, obviously. I'm probably not going to pick it up. I'm probably going to try and pick up everything except the miniatures from somebody else who buys the box and then tries to sell out the constituent parts on eBay. However, if you're someone that wants either all the Stormcast or all of the Skaven, right? And you don't want the rest of the stuff, the terrain, the cards, the rulebooks, etc. And you'd like to buy those things off me, and we can organise ourselves before the box comes out, let me know, because I'd sooner do it with somebody or 2 other people in the community, and cut out the profit margins for somebody on eBay. You know, I would buy the box and I would post you out the army, right? And you know, because I've got my reputation on the line, as it were. So you know, just if that's you, hit me up a DM on Discord. Anyway, I want to just talk briefly about the price, because a couple of other YouTube channels have been going like, "Oh, it's £10 more expensive." I've seen 2 different people going, "Oh, but that's inflation, though, isn't it?" It's like, no. £150 last year is not £160 this year. We are not that. We are not like. The Bank of England has an official inflation calculator which will tell you, you know, how much the £150 in 2023 is worth this month, and it is about £1 more. So £1 of the 10 is price rise, £9 of the 10 is Games Workshop greed, I guess. It's fine. Like, I'm not really complaining. That's not me going, "Oh, naughty Games Workshop." It's just like, I don't like being told, "Oh, yes, it's all inflation." It's, well, not according to the central bank. But there you go. If anyone is really interested in the economics there, they can head to the bank's website and scroll down, and they've got a whole load of things explaining where these numbers have come from. But yeah, 150 a year ago is not 160 today. That's not how that's going. Yes. So let's look at the Stormcast. Let's talk Warhammer, not the economy. All right, much preferred. I think these are really cool. They have done themselves a great service by changing the color scheme to silver, actually, because gold is a really, it's interesting, because they've made them look less distinct from other intellectual properties, because now, fundamentally, they look like knights, just by virtue of painting a different colour. I know that there's ones with wings and whatever, but fundamentally, the guys and gals at the top there with hammers, they could just be, pretty hench-looking human knights in a fantasy world. And something about giving them that silver armour, it just grounds them more in a sort of version of reality. They're wearing armour made of iron or whatever, and kind of your brain understands it more. But they do look a lot better. I just think the setting is becoming a bit more grimdark in a number of ways, and changing them from gold down to silver is one of those things. But I think it looks good. I think it would actually be really cool to have these alongside the Stormcast that were in the previous starter box, last edition. Because that had the big winged character, which looks quite nice. It would look quite nice with these three other winged fellows. So I don't know all the proper names for them. I'm really sorry. What I also found was quite interesting is that they put in little human followers for a couple of the characters there, which something you could just drop those into 40k. The humans up here, right? The humans up here. You could just drop these into 40k. They've even got little purity seal type things and sensors. I mean, it's just pure 40k. Aesthetically, they're moving these closer and closer and closer and closer to something more 40k adjacent, every single time they iterate on them, because they don't understand why they're not as popular as Space Marines, and they desperately want them to have that thing where there's a legion of people that will robotically buy the next Stormcast Eternal thing, in the same way there's a legion of people that will buy the next Space Marine thing. I'm not a massive fan of the mount, right? I quite like the infantry, I like the wing guys, I love the little hangers-on, I love the dishevelled kind of wolf dog raven now, right? But the big one, the big wolf dog raven, I don't know, it looks a bit interesting. I mean, I guess it's trying to make it look more fantasy, but it's better than the Skaven one, which we're going to look at in a minute. At least it's interesting, at least there's a bit of world building there. Let's look at the Skaven. So this isn't all the Skaven. You get 40 clan rats. I put some clan rats on, and then I think the sculpts were largely repeating anyway. But however many clan rats, you get 40 clan rats, right? And then 10 other fellas in the Skaven thing. It's really hard, and I'm going to say this a little bit later on when we get to the Adeptus Mechanicum, because when they're just redoing something that is a thing that they've already done, your brain almost goes, oh yeah, it looks like it should do, doesn't it? It looks, if I was imagining what a new clan rat would look like, it looks like that. And they're really good. They're really nice models. And if you like clan rats and you like Skaven and you've been waiting since, I think the original, the multi-part Skaven clan rat kit that these replace has been in the hobby when I started. I think it's that old. Or certainly it came out when I was very small. I'm pretty sure. Could have become confused, but I'm pretty sure. So, definitely these clan rats needed updating. And I love that they've still got some of the things, like the classic bits of Skaven aesthetic, the samurai bits that they have going on, where they've got some of the triangular shields and they got the little banner with the top part. That's really interesting. Skaven have a really unique aesthetic, which I often think has gotten lost over the years in favour of a more I'm going to call it gutter punk, right? Like a sort of, like dark magi punk thing, which is also very Skaven. But Skaven, have like a core martial aesthetic that is very core to Skaven that I fear has been gotten lost a little bit. And I'm really glad to see that they're retaining that with a couple of other things. So that's really cool. I hope that made sense. That's my observation anyway. So Skaven have got a lot of characters. They've got the new Rat Ogres, which are massive, and that'll be a cool thing to have in plastic. You've got the Giselle weapon teams. I think they're cool. Again, they just suffer from looking like they should look. so it's hard for me to get excited about them. The new cannon, I think that's a new model, a new concept right at the top here. That looks really cool. There's some much bigger, nicer pictures of this on Warcom. Go look at Warcom. Watch this for my opinion, but go look at Warcom to actually stare at the images. The slide is honestly there as a prompt for me more than anything else. Got a couple of new characters. Looks like an engineer and a grey seer. It's really cool, really classic. I don't like this guy. Like, I love the rider. The rider's fine, but like the mount annoys me. It annoys me when they do this. It annoyed me when they put Space Wolves on Thunder Wolves, and it's just always annoyed me. But more so than ever when they do it with a fantasy race like this, and they're like, oh yeah, the race of lizard men, they're going to ride lizards, and the race of rats now, they're going to ride rats, right? Now, like, humans don't ride, like, giant mongoloid-looking orangutans into battle. We ride horses, right? If you've got medieval humans, they ride horses. They don't ride something that they're, tenuously the same genetic lineage as them. It's like poor world building, and it really annoys me in a weird way because it feels really lazy. Maybe I'm the only one, and this is going to be one of my weird little side rants that nobody's on board with, I'm sure. But, like, it would be cool if... In World of Warcraft, they have a creature called a crocolisk, which it's a portmanteau between a crocodile and a basilisk. Like, obviously not that, because that's already a thing in another person's IP, but crocodiles in sewers is cool. Some kind of, like, crocodile-adjacent fantasy beast being ridden by a Skaven would be really cool, and it'd tell you stuff about where they have to live and the kind of creatures that they have to share that domain with and stuff, and not just, oh, it's a big mutated rat fella. And I get it, you can argue like, oh yes, you know, humans wouldn't ride orangutans into battle because we'd find that horrific, but Skaven, it like plays to their evilness that they're happy to ride the things that are like genetically related to them into battle. Like, I kind of get that, but I think that's trying to be really clever and apply a complicated like afterthought in universe like explanation to something that is actually just like, oh no, we didn't think about it particularly deeply. We just put the rat on a rat because they're rats. So it can be a rat on a rat. Fine. I don't know. I just wish it was something else, right? So we could learn a bit about there. They must eat sandwiches, right? Like, no, I mean, it sounds like a stupid thing to say, but I like to have some, like, hint of what my fantasy races are doing when they're not fighting each other. And the kind of animals they ride into battle and how they're cared for is one of those little bits of insight that you sometimes get in a war game. And it annoys me when it's just like, oh, a bigger version of the thing that it already is. They ride those. Yeah, cool. Rant over. Right, let's talk 40k. Sisters of Battle, my favourite army, my thing for 40k, the thing that I collect is getting a new codex, getting its 10th edition codex. So really interestingly, you can't see, I have the codex art for Sisters of Battle framed on the wall above my desk. So I've got the John Blanche, the 2nd edition Sisters of Battle codex cover. I've got the I can't remember the artist. I used to know them all, but the Witch Hunters codex cover in the middle there. I've got the one from the digital, like the digital download got a unique codex cover. They commissioned art for it, right? I've got this, the 8th edition codex up here, and then down here in a smaller frame, because those 4 are from warhammerart.com, and then down here in a smaller frame, I've got the 9th edition codex cover because I bought like they did one of these bundles where it's like one click and you buy everything that comes out for the thing and you get a free print in a frame. So I have that in the frame that it came in. So it kind of annoys me when they don't, and I know that most, like, I think Necron's got their own cover art, and the Gene Stealers that we're going to look at in a minute, the Gene Stealer cult, they got new cover art, but I know that the norm in 10th edition has been to not do new cover art. I think that's really annoying. And we pay the price has not gone down, the price has gone up, right? And the product's gotten tangibly worse. And it annoys me. And there'll be people in the comments going, well, why are you annoyed by this? It's not rules. And, I always feel like the only legitimate thing people are ever annoyed about is like the value of the miniatures in like a combat patrol changing, like how much they have to pay for stuff to play the game, and the rules of the game. Like, there's a lot of people out there that are just focused on it's basically the things that affect the actual playing of the game and the rolling of dice. They get people rustled, right? And I think Games Workshop is learning over time. It's like, okay, as long as our rules are balanced, right? Rules not being balanced, everybody kicks off. If it's too expensive to put together a 2,000-point army, people kick off, right? So we've got to care about those two things. But in terms of copy-pasting lore, or now just constantly reusing art assets, like, they're learning that nobody cares, right? Because I don't know. I don't understand, and perhaps you can enlighten me in the comments, how a hobby and a universe and an IP which is so overwhelmingly aesthetic, that's like it's, for me, the massive draw, the reason everyone plays 40k despite it not being the best system, is because its IP is so strong and the way everything looks is so iconic and strong and everything has such a look. Don't get me wrong, this is an awesome piece of art, but I already have it on my wall, right? Because it came out, it was commissioned for the 8th edition codex. Like, why can't Games Workshop just commission more art for each 3 years for each codex? What, that used to be the norm. It's and if nobody mentions it, and again they learn the only important things are the rules and the price of the models to play the game with the rules. I don't know. Dice rollers are in the majority in the hobby, aren't they? I suppose. Anyway, speaking of rules, I do care about rules as well, and I will talk about them and complain about them. I also care about the other stuff. There are 4 detachments. So they said in the video, one is similar to the index detachment, sort of our Martyr Lady themed detachment. Although, the fact they only have 4 detachments, they're getting further and further away from the idea. Like with Space Marines, it was, and in Chaos Space Marines, it was really clear. I don't think these detachments are necessarily themed around the 6 canon orders, because it's not clear, like the major orders, because like it's not. Maybe in the codex it'll be clearer with visual cues and the art they choose to use. But yeah, so we've got one themed around the current detachment, one themed around Flying Sisters. Obviously, you've got your new Canoness, you've got Celestine, you've got the Seraphim and the Seraphim. And that, I mean, like a full army of just those units, if the rules actually make that thing viable, I can see that being pretty good. Although something about the Battle Force box we're going to look at in a minute makes me think you can't just play the Flying Sisters, right? One is themed around close combat, and it's very much themed around the Penitence Engines, the Arco-Flagellants, the Sisters Repentia, those kinds of units. And then one they just said, the one that intrigues me the most, because I love playing a combined arms faction, and I love using basic Battle Sister squads, is themed around the Holy Trinity of the Bolter, the Flamer, and the Melter. Like, yeah, give me some basic buffs to Bolters, Flamers, and Melters. That might be really cool. It might not be, because it might end up being really Rube Goldberg-ish, where it's like, you've got to shoot a unit with a Bolter, and then shoot a unit with a Flamer, and then shoot a unit with a Melter, and your Melter can have +1 strength. Like, it might end up being, like, too complicated, but if it rewards you running lots of units with, this unit's got a Bolter heavy Bolter, this unit's got a Flamer heavy Flamer, this unit's got a multi-melter and a Melter, instead of just going, I'll take my 3 squad sisters all with multi-melters, because I think that's the best in this world where there's no difference in points value. I think that's probably the best one. That'd be really cool. So I'm with bated breath thinking about the Holy Trinity one. Otherwise, I'll probably stick with the index detachment. Although I might end up buying the Battle Force, so I might end up having enough models to play the All Seraphim one. Let's see. So we're going to look at the new models, or the new model, I should say, and the Battle Force. So, like Chaos Space Marines and I think like Imperial Space Marines not long ago, Sisters are getting a proper multi-part HQ choice. So they've got a multi-part HQ Cannon S already, and now they're getting a multi-part HQ Cannon S with a jump pack, which is pretty cool. So you can see the model on screen. It has 3 different weapons profiles. It has a halberd, it has an eviscerator, and it has a power sword and a power weapon and a hand flamer, according to the text. And then you can see in the box at the bottom on the left-hand side, in the corner there is also a power maul or power mace looking thing. Now, I think the choice between the sword and the cudgel will be cosmetic, right? I think your basically options will be choosing between, do you want a power weapon and a hand flamer? Do you want the eviscerator? Do you want the halberd? I'm sure one of those things will end up being the best, and I suspect it will be the eviscerator, bearing in mind they will all cost the same points. Rule of cool, I like the power sword because I like the classic, almost pseudo-biblical thing of the angel with the wielding the sword, you know, but they're all cool. Will I end up magnetizing the model? I'm not sure. Like, you could get more than one. I suppose you wouldn't. The problem with this is, if you found yourself wanting to run more than one in the same army, having that very specific base repeated over and over again would ultimately really annoy me. It looks cool on one model, it's a centerpiece, and it lets you, especially if you've armed her with a power sword, the base lets you quickly identify your Canoness if she's in a squad of, Seraphim, or where she could be confused with the Veteran Resistance Superior, or with Zephyrim, where she just kind of looks like one of the other Zephyrim, to be perfectly fair. So maybe that makes the other two more cool because they're less similar to the other things already on the board. Not sure. Well, like, rule of cool, I'm genuinely not sure, so I'm probably going to build the one that I buy depending on the rules. I have seen some people saying that, it's got a bolt pistol option. I've not seen that anywhere. That's not in the rules text. I think if you take the power weapon, you have to have a hand flamer. I think whether it's going to be like a better hand flamer, like a Canoness hand flamer that's a bit better, I don't know. 3 heads as well, so you've got the kind of hooded, the classic hooded head on the as we see with the power sword wielder. You've got this kind of bear head, which has got a very much of a more like a brawler, getting strong like Brienne of Tarth. I can't remember the actress's name, but they've tried to make someone with that kind of like, oh yeah, we're gonna have a lady who is a knight, but also they're gonna look like a rugby player in a women's rugby team. They're not gonna look like this kind of thing that would be pinned up in an Imperial Guardsman's barracks, So that's quite cool that they've done that. I think some people won't like that head because people always like to say, oh, Games Workshop can't sculpt female faces and they look like men. I think that she just looks kind of not ready for a night out, which is fine because she's a warrior nun. But there you go. We've also got a head with, in the bottom left there, we've got a head with the respirator, which I think is a bit lame because it looks like it just looks like a head that could just be in the squad. It doesn't look special or interesting for your Canoness. She just looks like one of the squad. But probably, you know, wouldn't choose to use that one. But, you know, yeah, nice to have the options. Other than the heads and the arms, it looks like the body is identical with no little changes or differences, which is fine. Yeah, good. Interesting that she seems to have the jetpack that's more. I'm sure she can join the Seraphim as well, but she has a Seraphim jetpack, which is because you can count the number of the things and the fact that it's got the spiky things on the balls, which is interesting as well. Right, the new Combat Patrol. Droning on about sisters more than I had about the entire of the Age of Sigmar box release, but if you know me and you know the channel, you were expecting it. Right, so Combat Patrol, we've got 10 Archoflagellants, 5 Celestian Sacrosancts, and then a multi-part box of Sisters of Battle and the multi-part Canoness on foot. So the value in points is obviously much worse than the previous box, but it's really hard. This one's very subjective. This is going to be more subjective than any other new versus old Combat Patrol, because the old Combat Patrol, you got a squad of sisters, but you had to have a bolter and a chainsword on the superior, which is very far from optimal, especially in 10th edition. You had to have a flamer and a storm bolter and no heavy weapon in the squad, which is very far from optimal, right, especially in 10th edition. You got a squad of Seraphim, but with no hand flamers, again, which is very far from optimal, especially in 10th edition. You got 3 Archoflagellants, which is cool in Combat Patrol, but ultimately kind of useless to you, unless you're being like a metagamey guy that loves units of 2 and 3. You got 5 Repentia, which again, you can't buy 5 more Repentia, you can only buy them in squads of 10. It's kind of annoying and useless to you. You got 1 Penitent Engine, which only had 1 loadout, but actually they gave it the better loadout, right? They gave it the twin buzzblades. But again, Penitent Engines come in boxes of 2. Penitent Engine was pretty cool though, because running 1 Penitent Engine was a thing you wanted to do. And you got a Rhino. So, recovering from a cough and trying to minimise the number of times I cough down the microphone. So, like, it is worse. It's worse in terms of the points value that you get towards your army, but, like, I ended up buying a box of 10 Archoflagellants and not building 3 of them to reinforce the 3 I'd already built and painted to 10. I ended up buying what you would do for the Seraphim is you buy a box of Seraphim and you build them with the Inferno pistols, and then you get the spare hand flamers. You put them on the ones that you already had. Later ways round it, I ended up buying a box of Repentia and then just building half the box to bring the 5 that I had up to a full squad of 10. So it's a bit weird, but then again, you also got in that kit the old one, like the Canoness was a unique sculpt. The squad had a unique sculpt, like a couple of unique sculpts with like more bits of detail on them, like more purity seals and stuff, and the Magnifier was a unique sculpt, and things like that. So it's a very weird one. Interestingly, this box, this Combat Patrol, is very similar to the Boarding Patrol or the Boarding Actions box that was a limited release. The Boarding Actions box it was the same as this, but swap the Archoflagellants for the full 10 model multi-pose Repentia box. I think they've swapped those 2 around for gameplay reasons, because obviously you've got to have an eye on the Combat Patrol like format potential of this now. And yeah, I don't think it's as good as the previous one, because even though the previous one had problems because the Rhino didn't really help you, you got a Penitent Engine. Penitent Engines were cool, but 10 Archoflagellants is actually really cool because they are pretty hard to shift, and on a small board they'll do pretty well even without a transport. So from a rules point of view, like possibly of playing the models that I have that correspond with these in the Combat Patrol format against Zimbad, I think it could be a pretty fun game. And in terms of value, you're getting better kits. You're getting less of them, but they're better. But then the other ones will perhaps had some unique aspects that a collector might want. So, you know, your mileage may vary if you're picking this up as a new player. But I certainly think in terms of the Battle Sisters squad and how annoying it is to kind of have to hack up and convert them. Like, you end up buying a second squad of Battle Sisters and then, like, trying to put flamers and things on old bodies or do different other bits and pieces, and that's just, it is annoying. So I think we're probably better off without those monopose kits now in the game. Now they've gone, and now that they have gone as well, I think that in our codex we're probably going to lose the ability to take 5-man or 5-woman, I should say, Sisters Repentia squads, and crucially the 3-model Arco-Flagellant squads, which I think is a good thing, because I think this business of taking loads of 3-model and 2-model units is really gamey and rubbish. I know it's powerful, and why are you happy that your army's getting less powerful? Because I don't want us to be doing well because our crotch is a weird gamey thing that doesn't represent the army on the tabletop, to be fair. The big question in my mind is pennant intentions. Are we going to be able to field 1 pennant intention, or because they're in boxes of 2 now, is the data sheet going to change to be like, you know, 2 pennant intentions in a squad at all times? Because that's a thing, because pennant intentions are really good for the price they were in points. Like a really good thing that you could add into an army list where you couldn't fit much else. Like a pennant intention will do work. It will do something. You put it in the game and it will do something for the points that it cost. Now, if you have to take 2, like, obviously it's still as good, but you have to take 2. So will it fit in as many lists? I don't know. Let's look at Genestealer Occults. So, Genestealer Occults, they got new artwork. It's pretty cool, actually. I think it looks pretty good. It's a little bit... no, it looks pretty good. Actually, I don't have no notes. No, I like that. No notes. 5 detachments, 1 more than the Sisters. Lucky them. Yeah, people are going to moan, oh, he only got 5 detachments. And I would be like, Sisters only got 4. What makes you special? Like, we're all minor factions in the eyes of, like, we're not Eldar or Orcs or Space Marines here. Come on. 1 is similar to the next detachment, as always. 1 is like bike-based with lots of outriders, but also I think the other vehicles, the Ridge Runner and things like that, like a fast, mobile, mechanized infantry type of thing. 1 is like what I like to call, you know, Genestealer Occults go loud. Like it's aberrants and pure strains by the sounds of it. It's the Genestealer Occults at the point in their like life cycle where they've decided, look, the High Fleet's going to be here next week. There's really not a lot of point, like, going to your job at the lasgun factory, loosening the bolts on a few lasguns, and then, like, going to the pub, pretending to be normal, and then coming home, right? Let's instead go and eat some babies, right? Or go and blow up a reactor, or let's all go to church, and then in the middle of the service, let's jump up and eat the preacher. You know, the point at which, like, the Genestealer Occults can't be bothered anymore, like being all stealthy stuff, which I think is sad, because I think Genestealer Occults are the most interesting when they are capable of scheming and plotting, and it makes them a narratively really interesting villain. But I suppose at the point at which you're seeing them on the tabletop should really be the point at which they're going, rah, 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 the star children cometh, murder, murder, murder. So, yeah, okay. 1 is themed about having loads of weak cultists, which, just like the basic, I don't even remember what they're called, but just the basic fellas, which is fine. And 1 is Brood Brother based. Now, this is interesting, because there's a little kill team tidbit here as well. So, Brood Brothers, for those of you that don't know, is the concept where Genestealer Occults infiltrate the Imperial Guard. Well, the Planetary Defense Forces, technically, which are effectively the Imperial Guard, right? Now, any Genestealer Occult army can, I believe, take 25% of its total points value from the Imperial Guard, or that is to say, the I can't even remember now. Not Adeptus Militarum. Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guard. 25% of their list from the Imperial Guard. And 50%. For the Brood Brother detachment, they take 50% Imperial Guard, right? Now, what's interesting for Kill Team is that they showed, as we know, as Kill Teamers, we're getting the Genestealer Cult the new Brood Brothers sprue is coming out as a kill team first. That's how it's getting its release. So really, 40k Gene Stealer cults are getting two things. They're getting a character that we're about to look at in a minute, and they're getting new Brood Brothers. Now, they showed the Brood Brothers in this preview, and I'm sure they're going to be pictured in this book, which makes me feel like the kill team termination needs to come out before Codex Gene Stealer cults. I feel like in the zone where every Sunday I'm thinking, is it going to be termination this Sunday? Not quite there yet, but I think they will be there soon. So that's pretty interesting. Like, if I was going to start collecting a Gene Stealer cults army, and I'm not, it would be Brood Brothers, because I think Brood Brothers is cool. I'm going to do a Brood Brothers kill team when the models come out at some point. I don't know when I'm going to get to it with all your things I got on, but I do think the Brood Brothers thing is cool. I like it more than the standard Gene Stealer cults. I understand that probably makes me weird, because a lot of people don't like the idea of Brood Brothers, but I think it's cool. It's got them alien vibes. I just think it's neat. If I can be bothered, I might do like a Brood Brothers Chimera or something for the kill team, just because it would be fun. Just to do one, like as part of the display base or whatever I decided to do. Yeah. Good. Brood Brothers, yes. So the new Benefictus, I think it was called, Benefictus, is this unfortunate young lady with a giant brain that's on the outside of her head and back, with a nice bit of Tyrannid carapace protecting about a third of the giant brain. Interesting stuff. So, like I was saying before, she's obviously part of that, and you can see that from the Biosantic Brood Surge Battle Force, which contains just Gene Stealers. Like, there's just some regular old, hello, we're purple and blue, we live on Space Hulks, we have 4 arms, we like to eat Terminators on toast. That just has some Gene Stealers in. It has some nice aberrants that aren't particularly sneaky, and it has some of the regular infantry-looking fellas as well, sure. But this is obviously modelling that one detachment that I told you about that is going to be the, no, we're just having a fight now, we don't care that you know that we're Gene Stealers, we're just going to get all of our Gene Stealers and put them out and make them kill you. Fine. The Benefictus is interesting because it's a new thing, right? So it's funny to contrast this with Sisters. Sisters got a model for a very old concept, but she's got different heads and different arms and different things. This is obviously in the vein more of the single frame mono build single plastic kit with, as far as we know, no options whatsoever. But it's a new thing in the lore. So this is a giant sort of psychic mutation, and the whole thing they said in the thing was about how, it's almost like the Gene Stealer cults have a, they have this kind of weird library of things that could mutate, and then when the need arises for one that could not have arisen before, and it mutates. So they've invented this because they've realised that the Gene Stealer cult's army is struggling at killing vehicles, and so they've given them a vehicle-killing, psychic laser-producing thing, which is pretty cool. So it's an anti-tank character that also gives lethal hits to the unit that they join, which is pretty cool. So yeah, an interesting thing. I'm not a big fan of the model. I'm not a big fan of that aspect of Gene Stealer cults. I like the idea of, your Gene Stealer cult's army that looks like an Imperial Guard regiment, except they're weirdly everyone that's got the helmet off appears to be bald. That's odd. And where's the commissar? I think that's cooler, but your mileage may vary as to what you like in your army. The new combat patrol. The Gene Stealer cult's combat patrol, the previous one, was legendary for the amazing value proposition that it was. Even though it's true that all modern combat patrols in 10th edition are worse than all previous combat patrols, the Gene Stealer cult's combat patrol stood above all the previous combat patrols in terms of value. And so whatever they did, it seemed like it was unlikely that it was going to equal the value of the previous combat patrol, right? Genestealer cults are this weirdly expensive army because they were full of brand new kits, but they're quite a horde army and they're quite difficult to collect, right? And get the 2,000 points because it's quite a big, you need quite a lot of models, right? It's the polar opposite of Custodes in that regard. I also don't like this combat patrol in principle for a combat patrol in the combat patrol format because 2 vehicles and bikes on a board that's the size of a double kill team board, like it seems like you're paying a lot of kind of points for things that you wouldn't necessarily want to bring to a game that size. If you're playing like, oh, it's 500 points, build your own army, I don't think these are the kind of units you'd pick for a table that size, right? It's weird. Then they've done that clearly because they want to try and put things in that are, you know, relatively cheap in terms of pounds, so they're giving less discount, but have at least quite a high value in terms of points, so that the combat patrol box is at least vaguely balanced against other combat patrols. It's a very elite Genestealer cult force, which is weird. Now, the one saving grace here and the one positive about it is if you're someone that maybe started Genestealer cults, you know, a year or so ago, and the core of your collection is very much 2 or 3 or 4 of the previous combat patrol box, which you know, a lot of YouTube channels that follow Genestealer cults were definitely recommending that that's what people should do. Then it's nice to see that some different things have come round again on discount, and because the bikes are lovely sculpts, and especially that bike leader, lovely sculpt. So, you know, it's nice that some different things have come around again, which is cool. It's nice that they have a leader in the box that can go with a unit in the box, which we shouldn't have to say, but it's a thing, right? So that's good. That's a good thing, and that's really the only positive I can really say about it. Right, on to 30k, the 30k Mechanicum. So, this is an interesting one because they're getting a lot. They're getting a lot of plastic kits. Now, I can already see people who play Adeptus Mechanicus in 40k complaining in the comments that they can't use any of this stuff in 40k. Probably very accurate. Yes, I'm sorry, you need to try and get over it. It's not going to get 40k rules. Now, most of this stuff, like all the robots and the tank, they just look right. They're just resin miniatures that have been competently put round into plastic, so they're going to be far cheaper. Not often you can say that in a Games Workshop preview video, and they used to be, because of the material change, and then far more accessible in terms of the ability to use them. And they're also going to be, you know, more mainstream, so people are going to know what they are, and more acceptable. So that's pretty cool as well. I think they look great. They look, you know, they look good. They're competent remasters of other things, like I said. It's nice that the big robot has the Plasma Bombard can now open, like it was always supposed to be able to do, but they couldn't make it work in resin apparently, so that's pretty cool. I think you'll see some of these pop up, both as AdMech armies in 30k, and also as allied detachments, and then there's also the console that Space Marines can take that lets you take like 1 squad of robots, so people will be tempted to, I'll just pick up a pair of Castellans and stick them in my army and paint them, you know, a random colour. That would be cool. The model for me that stands out is the Magos. I think she's beautiful. I think you could use this model in 40k just to count as the other Magos model. I mean, the weapons are, I'm sure, slightly different, and people like AdMech are like Tau. People who play those armies understand that the little shape of the barrel is a different thing, but they're not using the core Imperial weapons, so most people that play the game don't know by sight what your weapons are anyway. So you could easily just put her down on the table with no modification and say, yeah, this is my, you know, Magos, and nobody would notice the difference, and you'd get to use a much cooler miniature. In my opinion, your mileage may vary. And then that finally brings you on to the tech thralls at the bottom there, the Ad Secularis, I think, technically. Now, these are quite interesting because they did exist in resin, but they've not simply converted the resin figures over into plastic. They've drastically improved them and made them into a kit that looks like a proper multi-part plastic kit with some assembly options, which is really cool. They also, so the tech thralls, you used to be able to take an upgrade, at least in the old version. I'm not sure how they work now. In the old version of the Horus Heresy, you could take an upgrade for them that would make them effectively into zombie tech thralls, which gave them feel no pain and was really worth doing. And these days, the models actually represent that what used to be an upgrade. It may just be their default state now, I'm not sure. But they look like kind of tech zombies, which is pretty cool. Like, they're pretty badass. I think they're awesome as well, actually. Now, all of this stuff's going to come out first in a big box, with the exception of the Tech Priest and the big robot, which will be sold separately. Yes, good. Moving on, I'm going to quickly talk about Legion Imperialis. So, I don't play Legion Imperialis. I don't know anyone that does play Legion Imperialis. I'm not very interested, but I'm going to cover it pretty briefly. There's a new book coming out called The Devastation of Talan. It essentially... So, most people that know the Heresy will be familiar with the Battle of Talan. Big tank battle, the kind of... the Talan Imperial Guard tanks versus the Iron Hands, right? Or the Iron Warriors. That's the one I want. Yeah. And there's lots of new tanks coming out for that. Interestingly, they haven't painted the Solar Auxilia tanks in desert pattern to go on the desert world because they want them to blend in with the rest of the studio army. It's fine, right? But if you're gonna have your pseudo-historical game and put it in a pseudo-historical setting, and then you're gonna go for the Battle of Talan, which is basically supposed to be the African campaign from World War II, kind of, sort of, like, yeah, never mind, whatever. Little Lehman Rosses remain cool. If I was forced at gunpoint to play this game, then I'd be interested in this book, because if I was forced to play this game, then it would be Squadrons and Tiny Lehman Rosses would be my jam, but it's not something I'm going to get into. But if this floats your boat, like, I'm sure there's so many better sources of information out there than me. I just didn't want to ignore it in my video. And if you are playing this, because basically when it was on the way out, there were loads of people in my community trying to get me onto the hype train for it. None of them talk about it anymore on the Discord. So looking at you, friend of the channel, Mr. Nightfall. So if anyone is still playing it and they want to give me the 2-minute pitch, the comments are there. Yeah. Hive Secundus. So this is the latest starter set for Necromunda. It doesn't seem, unlike Ash Wastes, it doesn't actually seem like it's a new way to play. They didn't really say anything much about rules the whole time they were talking about Necromunda Hive Secundus. So I don't get the feeling that it's a reboot or a consolidation. And I don't really think, because I know I was kind of on the fence going, oh, if this is like a new edition of Necromunda, it's like a reboot, maybe I'll look at Necromunda again and see what they've changed. It doesn't look like they've changed anything. It just looks like this is another launch box. They periodically just do these big kind of launch boxes for Necromunda. I think this is something like the 5th one they've done now. Because there was the original one with the Escher and the Goliath that was on the cardboard Underhive tiles. Right, then they did the one that was the Enforcers and the Corpse Grinder cult, and they brought out the 3D terrain. Then they had one that was the Dilac and the Escher again, on a paper mat like this. And then I think that was another one that I've forgotten. And then they did Ash Wastes, and now this one. And Ash Wastes was legitimately a different way to play, but this is just basically having a starter set again. I will say, I think the actual starter set offering, if you compare this to the original Necromunda Underhive, the original Necromunda Underhive that they did, when I say original, I don't mean original Necromunda, I mean like the original launch box for this version of Necromunda, right? It had like these card floor pieces that you could rearrange to get a different like layout for your games, and it had more doors than this, and you had some extra scatter terrain. This, I mean, if you like the models and you want to buy the box to get the models and you want the updated rulebook, looks like it's updated and consolidated anyway, then that's probably good. But as a starter product, it has gotten worse, right? And it's almost like, oh, why are you talking about the paper mat? No, nobody cares. Like the same reason I talked about the art on the Sisters Codex. Like people care about the wrong thing, in my opinion. Like people care about the wrong things. Yeah. Don't let Games Workshop like skimp on stuff that you should care at least a little bit about, right? Because presumably, if you love Necromunda, you want people to be wanting to play Necromunda, and therefore you want your starter set to be really, really good, right? Not just, oh, right, cool new models, and then the bare minimum, which is what this looks like, right? Anyway, let's get on to the cool models, because they are cool. Like, the new GC Occults look really mad. I've been trying to look at these. They look slightly vampiric in their faces. They look to me, more than anything else, like a mashup between Gene Stealer Cults and the Flesh Eater Courts from Age of Sigmar, right? Especially if you look at those, the human cultist heads, they got a very kind of Flesh Eater Courts vampiric aspect to them. If you look around the mouths of the Gene Stealers, they've got a very kind of vampiric looking aspect around them. They look really cool. I think they're really interesting. So the lore for these cults that on Necromunda is really fun. I enjoyed this section of the preview because essentially what you have is a tech priest, Magos Biologicus, who goes, I want to be able to cure people that have been infected with, the Gene Stealer Plague, as they were calling it, right? I want to take a Gene Stealer cultist and inject them with something and get the human back, right? So I'm going to meddle and look at the genetic code of Gene Stealers and try and synthesize a cure. So noble motives, but basically one of the rules of 40k is that most of the time a tech priest tries to invent something, it goes horribly, horribly, horribly wrong. And in this case, it went horribly, horribly, horribly wrong and made a really virulent Gene Stealer Plague type thing that infected the whole of the hive, right? And then essentially the hive ends up getting nuked from orbit by Lord Helmwar over in, Hive Primus. Like, no, we don't need Hive Secundus anymore. Fly the space station over it, and then just ion cannon the, the hive. There we go. And now, for whatever reason, the gangs of Hive Primus have been like, oh, let's go into Hive Secundus for reasons. And this is the stuff they find when they go in. The tiny enslavers that float around are not explained. Were not explained what they were or why they were. One person's headcanon theory that I saw was that maybe the Magos used enslaver DNA to try and synthesize his cure, which would be pretty flipping nuts, but that's also kind of cool. So I really like the lore for these. I kind of like the models. Honestly though, if I was going to play Necromunda, I probably wouldn't play them. But I like them. It's one of those things where I like that they exist in 40k, and I like the texture that they have. And one other wrinkle that I thought was really interesting was, like all Gene Stealer cults do, they send out their beacon to the hive mind to say, yeah, my Gene Stealer cults, establish itself here on this planet. We've gotten to a nice big size. Come and roll up, and the buffet service is open, and the hive mind basically gone, that Gene Stealer cult's beacon that's not something we want to eat. So actually, weirdly, they are protecting Necromunda. They are acting as a guardian because they're in a sort of lighthouse that's keeping away the, a reverse lighthouse. No, a lighthouse. The metaphor works because lighthouses keep ships away from the rocks. Sure, yeah. They're acting as a sort of lighthouse for keeping away the hive mind. The Tyranids are never going to invade Necromunda because they don't want to reabsorb these back into the hive mind because they're kind of scared, which opens up interesting avenues of is this how you could kill the Tyranids? You mess up some captive Tyranids or captive Gene Stealers and wait for them. You know how people kill ants? You put down the bait trap and you wait for the ants to take the bait, and they hit the bait back to the nest, and then the bait is poisoned, and then you kill the nest. That's ultimately how you kill the Tyranids, right? Trouble is, that will never come to fruition because the main 40 Necromunda's like this soft little play pen where they can experiment and do stuff, and it will never impact like the greater 40k lore because of how they've set it up now as a kind of mini IP within an IP, right? But it's a fun idea to think about and speculate. I think it was really cool, yeah. And then we got the good guys, I guess comparatively good guys, right? So you got some new models for the Van Saar and also some new Spires. Now I'm bitterly disappointed about the Spires in a way, because if you remember the Spires of old, they were all like different kinds, all from different noble houses. And the idea was it was a thing nobles would do. They band together and go on safari, and in the Underhive, and the different noble houses would build different kind of suits to keep them safe, and it was quite funny. And this is far more grimdark, and they're all from House Helmoir because, like, that's the ruling house, and that's what we're doing. And so there's only the one type of Spire suit. And also, apparently, to get in these suits, these guys had to be not genetically modified, sorry, but physically modified. So I think they said they had their legs cut off, right? So they're just a torso with like little stubby thighs to control their suit. But they go into Hive Secundus. Basically, the whole thing is they want to hunt and kill a Gene Stealer, and bring back the Gene Stealer's head, stick it on the wall, and then presumably they get loaded into a more elegant like frame for the rest of their life, and they can noble about like having proven that they can kill a Gene Stealer, which is pretty cool. But I just think I wish we still had the kind of Power Rangers thing of all the different kinds of Spire, you know, the Yields and the other ones, and that was kind of cool. But this is also cool, you know. And then you've got the Van Saar but basically, like, we've had one round, I think, of like 5 or smaller like upgrade boxes for all the gangs with some more weird specialists. This is like another set of upgrade boxes for the Van Saar with weird specialists. I'm going to assume that over the next year, every house gang is going to get a third box. You know, so you got like the basic box, you got the box that came out a little while ago, and then you get like a third box with some new kinds of specialists. So that's pretty cool as well. Again, they shared nothing about rules, really. It was all, here's the models and here's the lore behind them. And that's it. That was the entire preview. We're just going to talk a little bit next about what could come next in the world of Warhammer. So, first of all, I know this slide's really busy. Direct yourself to the far right-hand side, the spreadsheet. This is where I have been keeping track of what we know about. So, there are 2 things in white there. 30k plastic melee weapon set and a 40k super secret army, or Codex Redacted as some people call it. Those are things that have been on roadmaps that we haven't heard hide nor hair of since. I know that the Codex Redacted is widely tipped to be Imperial agents, but that's not been officially confirmed. Things in yellow are things that have been on a hype stream or appeared on the Warcom homepage, so we know that they exist. We've seen pictures of them, but we don't know when they're coming out. And things that are in green have either come out, right, and you can buy them, people have them, or they have at least been placed on a Sunday preview or a pre-order, so the release date is a known thing for them, right? So we're running out of things, actually. We got very little because we haven't got a roadmap. Like, normally, last year, I won't say normally, it only happened once, but last year at Warhammer Fest, we got roadmaps for everything. This year, no Warhammer Fest, and the only roadmap we've had since Fest had those 3 codexes on for 40k. 40k got a roadmap. I would expect we'll probably get an Age of Sigmar roadmap at the next reveal seminar, which, as far as I can tell, unless they do another one or like a web-only one before then, the next reveal seminar is at the Nova Open on August the 28th at 8 p.m. Whatever the local time is to the Nova Open. I imagine it's EST. Now, because it's not really a live stream anymore, it's all pre-recorded. So probably the pre-recorded release on Twitch of the same information will go live as that one finishes. So probably about 9:30 EST on the 28th of August is, I think, going to be the next reveal, when you might expect to see something about the next edition of Kill Team, potentially. I would expect an Age of Sigmar roadmap, because that's what they're hyping. I would expect an extension of the 40k roadmap and a preview of the next couple of codexes. But I don't know if they have enough to get through to last them until August, because we're only in May, mid-late May. So June, July, and most of August. And yeah, sure, they're going to release Age of Sigmar. They're going to release Kill Team Termination, Warcry, Briar and Bone. The 40k stuff, although... And the dwarf, I suppose, yes, they don't usually hold on to old world stuff for one of these reveal seminars. So I imagine we could see the next the dwarves come out and then see the next old world stuff teased. I imagine the redacted codex is now going to be teased before Nova, because I reckon at Nova they're going to tell us about what's widely regarded to be the next codex after the redacted codex, which is apparently going to be the Blood Angels. Yeah, I think that's probably what's going to happen. Good. And that's about that. I've been talking for an hour, which I think was longer than the reveal stream today. Yesterday, sorry. So it was a lot to go through. Some of it I went through in excruciating detail, and some of it I rushed through, but that's my personal biases. You know, it is what it is. There are many other channels available for you. I want the new Age of Sigmar rules. Everything from that box, the rules, the boards, the cards, and the terrain, just none of the actual models. I want the Sisters of Battle. I'm probably just going to buy the FOMO box and the Codex, because I fear because I fear missing out otherwise, right? Are you hyped for anything? Let me know in the comments. There was a lot there. I know some people will go, oh, there was nothing. Like, believe me, as someone who's been talking for over an hour, there was a lot. People will say, oh, there was barely anything previewed, because there wasn't anything that they want, right? But there was a lot of stuff. Yes. Big thank you to all my members, but especially Nightfall and Massive Crit, who are both subscribed at the highest possible tier. Thank you, guys. That means so much. Big thank you to all my other members. Big thank you to all my subscribers. Big thank you just to everybody that watches the video. It's amazing. It's always amazing. It's always been amazing. And I should be streaming on Wednesday, so do tune in for that. Cheery bye.